Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
President Ronald Regan and Vice President George Bush begin their second term in office. Coke releases new and improved New Coke, meeting so much opposition that old Coke is back on the shelves in 3 months. The Unabomber is on the loose. Back to the Future opens in theaters across America, and Mike and Kim Tyrell arrive for their first year as house parents at St. Joseph's Indian School. These things happened 40 years ago. Here to tell us what it's like 40 years later, the school's president, Mike Tyrell. Hello, Mitakie. Welcome to Hochoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School's campus. I'm Scott Wooster, your Hochoka host. Today we're talking with the school's former president, Mike Tyrell, who dropped by the studio before departing this summer to reflect with us on 40 years at St. Joseph's Indian School. He's joined us before, and he joined us again for this sit-down. Welcome, Mike.
Good to see you, Scott.
Good to see you,
Thanks
too.
for having me here today.
Absolutely. So I want to start at the beginning with you and just talk a little bit about where you're from. I mean, if you're anything like me, you're growing up, you can't imagine that this would be your future and that you're going to spend 40 years in a place like this. What was it like for you growing up, and did you have any inkling that you were going to serve in any kind of way like this?
Great question, Scott. So this morning when I came onto campus again, there's this wonderful feeling when you come to our campus here at St. Joe's. And so every morning that I've been able to drive on campus, many of those mornings, usually say a little prayer when I get to campus, just sign of the cross, and then allow the Spirit to kind of touch me. So that happened again this morning, and I honestly, I feel very blessed to have done this work and that type of thing. So growing up, I was one of 10 children, grew up in Joliet, Illinois. My mother and father were very humble people, very Catholic, good people. And they didn't have a lot of money, but they insisted on sending their kids to Catholic grade school and high school in Joliet. And that was a big deal because I think that was kind of the formation of my life anyway. And I would say that growing up as Catholic, getting that sense of Catholicism regularly and as part of my education did build a foundation of this idea that there needs to be some service in your life and that type of thing. So, our claim to fame as Tyrrells is there were 10 of us and we lived in this little teeny tiny house, and people would drive by and say, I think there's 10 or 8 or 12 kids that live in that little house. How did that happen?
Talk of the town.
Talk of the town. But no, it was good. And I think that we were brought up very humbly and brought up with this idea, again, I said, of service and that type of thing. So I went to Western Illinois for college, and then once I got out of college, Kim and I got married, and we, I was working in a business. I went to school for finance. I was a finance major.
Okay.
And first I worked as a bank auditor, and then I worked in a brokerage firm for about a year and a half. And there was always something missing. I always felt like, it's nice to be doing business kind of work, but could I ever match that up with something that was a little more giving, a little more contributing to society, giving back a little bit? And so somewhere in that, Kim and I were married about a year, and in that first year, I don't know if we were bored, I don't know if we were just looking for something else to do, some adventure. Didn't have any children then, so decided to look around for various types of volunteer work. And somehow we ended up looking through this resource book called Response, and there was these organizations, and we signed up to applied at St. Joseph's Indian School. I just wrote a letter, ended up getting an interview, ended up getting a job here. And so here we are, Kim was 23, I think, and I was 25, and we headed to Chamberlain, South Dakota for a year of service. I do think, though, I did have a sister that, growing up, did work in Montana at St. Labray for a couple years, and so maybe that planted a seed, too, of that you could contribute to society through different kind of work and that type of thing.
You also had family here too, when you were first starting. A couple brothers maybe ended up, but were you the trailblazer for that, or?
Yeah, so I would have come first, and then the year was 85. It seems like some days it seems like just yesterday, and some days it seems like 40 years ago. Right. Depends on the day. So, yeah, at some point, I did have a brother Tim and a brother Jim that worked here as house parents and did different things. So, but Kim and I came first, and, you know, like all of us got, I'm sure the first day we got here, it was like, oh boy, we're in over our heads. Mm-hmm. And then the first day kids show up, oh boy, we're in over our heads. And then the miracle of the mission and the blessing of the mission seems like time fills in. And, you know, I've told this to a lot of people. I've realized it's a ministry of presence. Yep. The kids will trust you, the families will trust you, people will trust you as you're present. Mm-hmm. You can't just come here and freelance and say, everybody's going to trust me on day one. Yeah. You have to be present, you have to spend time, and you have to live in each other's worlds. You have to spend time getting to know one another and empathize and try and come to an understanding of one another.
Absolutely.
And certain values like hope, love, desire for education, all those are universal things that are part of our mission that just blend in. And if you embrace those, you know, here you are 40 years later realizing how blessed you are because you were able to work here at St. Joseph's Indian School. It's kind of the universal traits, like I said, love, hope, desire to interact with people, those types of things. And the kids do see and understand the legitimacy that you bring to the table. Mm-hmm. It's not that they accept you on day one. It's not the families accept you on day one, nor should they. Yeah. Yet, if you come back, if you show that you care, concern, compassion for them, then what happens is you eventually grow to learn the culture or learn a little more about the culture, learn to understand some aspects of the culture, those types of things. Then you really begin to immerse yourself in their world, and they also immerse themselves in your world. Yeah. And, you know, back in the old days of the homes, you could see various house parents and the way they ran their homes, certain things they liked, certain things they served at meals, and the kids would pick those up and end up liking those types of things. You know, on day one they might not, but after a little time and effort, and it's a kind of a universal thing, and it's a wonderful thing, but it does take sometimes some intestinal fortitude, because there's some tough days here, and there's days here that the mission will tap you out a little bit and will take from you. But in the end, you always receive way more than you ever gave here at St. Joe's. Yeah.
For folks that don't know, your wife is gregarious, outgoing, you know, somebody that I think kids would gravitate to because of her personality, and they would want to be a part of Kim's world. In your book, you guys talked about your struggles as you went along, and you talked about aha moments. What did you pick up? When did you know that you were sort of in, or as they would say in Chicago Mafia, a made man? When did you know that you had kind of crossed that hurdle, the final hurdle?
Well, one thing you just kind of mentioned prompted was a story I remember where, you know, my brother Tim and I came here and we coached football for a couple of years. We started the football program, tackle football program. And some of those guys do come back now and talk about some of those days playing ball. But there was a couple days where we'd have some tough practices after school, and then we would go home, and Mike Tyrell and Kim Tyrell would sit at both ends of the table, and the kids always sat in the middle. And on those days, the guys who played football were all down at Kim's side of the table. Oh, yeah. Because it was a tough practice, and they were a little irritated with the coach at that point. But no, somewhere in that first year, later in the year, and it was I would say it was a tough year. It was older boys, but somewhere in that year, something clicked near the end of the year, and it was that decision to come back. And that decision to come back then prompted the next year where Kim and I actually had boys and girls in the homes, and that that was great.
Yeah.
And Kim really bonded with the girls. And then we had all boys the next year after that. This was the early years of the homes, and they were kind of sorting out what grade kids should be with what, with whom, and that type of thing. And so, anyway, back to your question, this idea that somewhere in there, it just kind of clicks, and and all of a sudden, I talk in the book, I think the first time we went home must have been around Thanksgiving, fall break, and there was kind of I wish these kids were more appreciative. And by going home at spring, it was like feeling bad for some of their situations and really more worried about them than feeling sorry for ourselves or feeling sorry for myself and that type of thing. So I think it was somewhere in that year where you just kind of grew into it, and you felt like you were all one. You were kind of one team, one home. And we used to pride ourselves in the Pinger home, and that we had some certain expectations when we were on duty. Even when we were out as a home, there was a certain standard that we wanted our students to meet, and they would meet it, and they would thrive. They would thrive, and they would, I think, enjoy the structure and enjoy the hopefully the regular love, the consistency, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
but and I've heard you say this before. Once you've done this long enough and you've been through that, you have to kind of be a steadying influence for the folks who are coming in to work, because they're all going through it. You can almost read it in their faces and in their eyes and their body language that they're having a tough time. And I've heard you say this time and again, especially maybe in a hard February or March when it seems like the school year's not going to end and the South Dakota winters aren't going to end, and you get to the point where you go, relax, we're going to get through this. I know it doesn't feel like it, but trust me. And you have to be somebody who's gone through that in order to tell them that they're going to get through it. So I've heard you do that, and that perseverance, I think it's always been part of your makeup. I think your parents gave you that, but I think this gives you that too in working with the home. What do you think about that?
No, I agree with that. And we know those. There's a cadence that goes with our school year here, and it's a kind of up and down, a lot of energy in the fall, and then South Dakota winter, whether you have a lot of snow, whether it's super cold or not, there's a little less light, it seems like the walls kind of move in a little closer, particularly as a house parent in the homes. And then there's something in your head about the calendar, March 1st. Dennis Lipkowski, who was our boss my first year, he brought us all in on March 1st, and we had this big celebration, and it was snowing out. But there was something about March 1st and the calendar flipping that meant spring was here, and things were going to liven up, and then the spring here at St. Joe's is always a lot of it's a great time. Spring in South Dakota is a wonderful time after you've had kind of the doldrums of the winter, and so what you're always doing is mentoring and trying to show by example new people that hang in there. You'll get through this, and when you do, you'll be a better person, and you will feel almost like you climbed the mountaintop. And I've said this many times. I appreciate anybody who wants to work at our mission, work at St. Joe's. Of course, being a house parent, I respect people who want to be house parents. But man, you do the work in year one, please come back for year two, because that's when it all pays off. The kids know you from day one. You know the routine. You know the way things work at St. Joe's. You know the natural flow of the year. And that's where you really begin to reap the benefits. And so occasionally somebody will be here just a year and have to leave for whatever reason. And I always feel bad for them, because the payoff is year two and beyond.
You've paid your dues. The relationships are built. Now let's get to work. Now let's have some fun.
And I also wanted to say that, you were talking about 25, naive, clueless as people.
Yeah.
But the good fortune is Kim and I have had 5 kids, and Izzy, our youngest, was actually a house parent for a couple years at the age of 24 and 25.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch her go through that.
Yeah.
Comes home crying in late fall because of the kids driving her crazy, and then that love that came up in the spring, and then her ability to get through that second year, to coming back for a second year, and really, again, reap the benefits of that. But in watching her, realizing, man, how young we were at 25, and how maybe we thought we were really good at this, and probably weren't as good as we thought.
Yeah.
But a great formation in our lives, and the house parenting really transformed us and made us different people, and just wonderful. And the relationship with those kids in the early years, we're still kind of parent figures for them, and we've seen the tragedies and the wonders of their lives play out over this 40 years too. So that hasn't been lost either. We have to talk about Kim Tyrell for 1 second, because she is a people person. She really is the life of the party, and you mentioned this. Kids would gravitate to her naturally, and she was always very welcoming, very loving, and the kids totally liked her. And it was a few years ago, there was one of our former students came back, and they had run into Kim, and they came to me and said, she still smells as good as she did back in the old days. Because Kim and her perfume, was always legendary, but no, I was blessed with a partner that just knew people and felt comfortable with people, and people then felt comfortable with her. So it was a good partnership, because I was the old guy sitting in the corner, and Kim was doing all the good relationship building.
Right,
so
and she's non-threatening. Yeah. She's bubbly, and she's non-threatening, and that's important too. I found that I don't want to come across as a threatening person to the kids in any way.
Right.
And sometimes we do just by our presence.
Right.
We mentioned mentoring people. So the house parenting is a lot of fun, but at some point you moved into a whole different direction, okay? And we're talking about 35 plus years of a 40-year career. You had your business degree, your finance degree. You had worked in that field for a little bit. That had to have fed in a little bit to your decision to go into leadership roles here at the school. What did that look like for you as you moved on from house parenting? What prompted you to get into the role that you're in now, and what are the twists and turns that have gone that way? So
after 3 years of house parenting, the superintendent at the time said, we're split up in some departments here at St. Joe's. You got a development office, you got programs, you've got different areas on campus, and we need to consolidate to one kind of HR office. We need some, the child service would recruit their own people, development would recruit their own people, and he wanted to centralize that. So Kim and I actually started the first HR department, and Kim found her niche. She recruited house parents, and
me too.
She'd go out on the road and she'd recruit people, and she was pretty good at that. And so so we started the early days of HR. It was not as sophisticated, not as developed as was here today, but it was the beginning of that. And so, and then after that, there were several years moved into we needed somebody, superintendent of the programs and that type of thing. So I moved into that, and then somewhere in the mid 2015-16, the president of St. Joe's left, and so they needed president. There was not an SCJ ready, and so I was asked to be an interim, and then eventually became president of St. Joseph's Indian School. And so, and president in name only. It's the mission is more important than any person, any place or thing here at St. Joe's. But it was just the idea of. So I was asked to lead the programs, and in simplistic terms. And so what that calls for is, trying to set a direction for the organization, trying to keep our mission vibrant and up to date for those we serve and the people we work with and that type of thing. So all the twists and turns over the years, we were talking about some milestones. Back in the mid-'90s, we got our first accreditation from Council on Accreditation. And I look back at that as the beginning of us. The homes were started in the mid-'80s.
Yep.
And so we were moving along as a home residential program, residential educational program, but it was in the mid-'90s when we accredited where outside standards kind of came into play.
Yeah.
And I think over the years that's helped us professionalize ourselves as an organization. I think that's been very good for us over the long duration because Council on Accreditation has national standards that we try and adhere to and meet. And it's been good. It's been a challenge for us, but it keeps us on our toes, and we go through reaccreditation every 3 years.
Okay.
And so that's been good for us over the years.
Is there anything that you're leaving on the table? Anything that you go, oh man, it's hard to leave because I wanted to see this happen and I didn't get to do that? Is there anything you feel like you're leaving behind?
I don't know if there's anything we're leaving behind. The hope is that one leaves a legacy of goodness, kindness, and that we, as an organization, are professional, but we find the balance in those SEJ values of reconciliation, of love, of service, of those types of things. And so I'm hoping that the business side never supersedes the mission side, that the business side never becomes more important than that one-on-one work with a student, that openness and welcoming and love for families, for the hope for our alumni, those types of things. And I talked about universality of those traits, but I also think that the hope is that in your legacy that the goodness is left on the table, the love, that kind of thing, as opposed to some other things. Are there some things we haven't done? Oh, sure. There's a bunch of them. There's probably a lot of little things that are more personal to me than anything.
Yep.
So I don't even know if I can name them all now, but there's a few days as we're wrapping this up and just about my time is just about here, where I'll drive to campus and say, maybe I should have done that a little bit different, or maybe that could have been better. But it can never be an I statement. Our work here is always about we. And so many people are dedicated to the work and the mission here at St. Joe's staff-wise, and then it expands to people who are willing to, fund us and willing to support us and those types of things. Those people are also heroes in the mission too. And so we represent them. We represent the hands and feet of those people in our day-to-day work here. So it's a lot of we here in the work. And so I guess, less about what we're leaving on the table and more just thankful that I've been exposed to a lot of wonderful people, from our students to families to our alumni to staff to our wonderful, generous supporters. And it's a worldwide thing. We go to Germany, and there's people there that are willing to try and support the mission too. So it's pretty cool if you think about it.
The question I want to leave folks with is, what are your feelings leaving this place? How do you feel about making this journey?
Like I said before, I'm blessed by the journey. I'm blessed by the work and that type of thing. So on the way out, I think I would characterize that as it's a feeling of great sense of being humbled by the mission, and feeling humbled that I was able to sit in a leadership spot, and hopefully people would see me as a leader, maybe not, but that in that it's kind of weird, but it's also time to move on. There's a lot of cool people that are here right now that are willing to take on the mission, to continue the work of the mission.
I see
and
that.
so it's less of a big dramatic thing and more of kind of a handoff as I kind of ride into the sunset and life goes on. So it's not a big huge deal in that regard, and it's more about setting up situation where it just rolls into the next person and that type of thing. We're at 90 some years at St. Joe's. We're going to be starting the next 100 years. That is going to be so cool. And there's such a great foundation set now for the next group of people, the next group of leaders to really take it and run with it and do it in a way that serves the mission, serves our family of students, but also meets the needs of those who support us and that type of thing. So the future has a potential to be wonderful here at St. Joe's. And so I'm glad for that. And I think it's on to the next people and on persons that keep the mission going as long as it needs to go.
Just let me, if I can, be one to say wopila to you for leading this organization in a good way for 40 years. It's you have been a leader here for sure, and it's nice to know that somebody's at the helm and you can that's providing that direction that everybody trusts and knows where they're coming from. So wopila for what you've done here for these kids for 40 years and taking that leap of faith with Kim to come out here from Illinois at that time.
Well, thanks, Scott. And again, place is in good hands, and the mission continues on.
Yeah, and thanks for being here at Hochoka too. I know this is a fun studio to be, but it's also, it's hard to talk about yourself sometimes. So we thank you for being here to do that. So.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate your work, too.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And we'll thank our audience for joining us here at Hochoka at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Till next time, stay centered.